Hello, everybody. Chris Flick here, episode 11 of the Chris and Friends podcast. Today I guess when you live in the country, you could live like kind of a mile away from somebody and still consider them a neighbor.
You're my neighbor.
So
Yeah,
my neighbor here, Molly Sunderlin. Molly, first, usually kind of start this thing, we talk about some life experiences and all that, but just to give a quick background, could you kind of let us know kind of what you do for work and then like how you kind of got into that and all that?
Sure.
Cool? All right.
So for the last, I guess, 3 or so years, my professional work, I'm a personal trainer, self-employed, kind of a nomad. I go to people, I train people out of other spaces, focus a lot on strength work. So I'm a personal trainer. I'm also a coach for our local high school and middle school cross-country and track programs.
We're just learned we're going to be going against each other.
We are.
Because I'm coaching at a different school down the road this year. So
not
that'll
exactly
be cool.
our athlete. I don't coach the throwers, so.
This is new for me too because I threw in high school, but I never threw the discus. And when you watch the technique videos on that, it's there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
Anyway.
So we'll get to see each other on the track.
So you'll be working with kids.
Yep.
You coach.
Yep.
You have the business at home, right?
Yep. That's right.
think, I don't know, I guess we had a similar path where like COVID shut down stuff. It
Yeah.
made training tough. And I ended up moving, you got creative with what your setup is, right? And then I also did too, and we were both kind of working, doing this similar stuff in kind of the same neck of the woods, I guess. And did it work? How did it work? Did it work out good for you?
Fine. You know, I didn't know this was going to happen, but that COVID was pretty much right when I really started to do this work.
Yeah.
You know, this was a career change for me. So I had been working at a gym in Regalsville. COVID happened. I said, oh, okay, what are we going to do here? Started doing stuff out of the garage and the backyard. And then it's just sort of evolved to, I don't really do much at my house anymore. Now I just, go to people, use other spaces, and it works out really nicely. So it's not anything I planned.
You'll go to homes?
Yeah, I go to people. Yep.
All right, cool.
If they have the right setup.
Yeah.
So it's got to be, it's got to work out. So it's most people in Easton actually. So it works out really well. Some people just don't really want to be in a gym anymore, and I get that. And depending on their particular, life, where they are in their life, it works for 2 or 3 of my clients. So
I think convenience is key when like you develop programs, and it's like you could give somebody something incredible, but if they have to drive 25 minutes to the gym, do a 45-minute workout, drive 25 minutes home, and then do family stuff and get to events, it's like it gets cut. That's the first thing I think that gets cut. So if you could bring some convenience to somebody's life, it makes things a little easier. But you said it was a career change, right?
It was.
So what were you doing previously then?
So I was a career counselor for 13 or 14 years at Lafayette.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Because I want to see that. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to let you fit. You know what? I'll just ask you now then.
All right.
13 or 14 years with college students.
Yes.
Did you see a change over that decade plus?
Ooh.
Kids change, you think? Because that's what everybody says now. It's like, oh.
Yeah. So I think so. When I started with them.
Can I make one more thing?
Yeah.
I mean, if that's like, what? 2005-ish?
So
like the iPhone kind of started, all of that stuff probably started around 2005, 2010.
Facebook was just starting. I remember when I was starting working there.
So right at the rise of social media is going on, you are working with college kids, I guess. All right, so.
And I actually started out, when we first moved to the area, I was coaching a little bit at Lafayette. I just was a volunteer.
Yeah.
And then I was looking for something, more permanently in higher ed, all around, and it was nothing I actually even had ever planned to do. I had been a high school teacher prior to us moving to the area, but knew I wanted to work in higher ed somehow. Kind of luckily found this opportunity that they appreciated my background from having taught high school students, and I just wanted to work one-on-one with people. So I think I did. I'm trying to think from my combination of coaching the kids and then working with them as a career counselor.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to think about it because I came from my, when I left college, right, there was a whole lot of nothing, right? I didn't get my first cell phone until, after college. Mm-hmm. I think that, I'm trying to think if I could boil it down.
Well, I think it's the small transitions that you don't really notice.
Yeah.
But then at the end of 10 years, it could be something, there could be a big change, but it's like just small little things over the course of time.
Well, I think that one thing we had to work a lot with the students on was just how to communicate in person, actually. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. We had to say, all right, how are you, because they were getting more and more used to communicating in other ways, right? So we had to talk a lot about, what does your communication really look like when you're talking with an alum, let's say, you're trying to do networking? What does your communication look like when you're talking with a potential, someone who's going to hire you?
Yeah.
So I think that was probably a theme of what we worked on most with them, honestly, was getting comfortable with how you connect with people. How do you have that balance of like, all right, I might need to follow up with an email, but I need to make that personal connection too, because it was more and more going to using LinkedIn. And we were very aware of, especially at the beginning, like make sure anything that's on Facebook, they're going to be able to find, and be aware of your, at first they didn't really get that, because at first I remember what the case was, you could not have Facebook. Back when I started off, you couldn't have Facebook unless you had an EDU email address.
I was in college at the time.
Yes. And then that changed. So what we said to the students at that point, right, was
then it was like parents, and then it went to a younger generation. I think high schoolers were getting on.
So our advice to them at first was, okay, remember, even though only EDU people can technically have a Facebook account, guess what? These companies have interns who probably have EDUs. They can check your Facebook account. Easy. Of course, that's totally out the window now. Anybody can have it. So it was I think we gave them some different kinds of advice at the beginning compared to later on when I was working there, because of how things changed. Yeah.
I don't remember this guy Jonathan Haidt. Yeah. I don't know where he worked, but one of these like prestigious universities. He wrote this book, The Coddling of the American Mind. Okay. So he associated that iPhone thing really, but since 2008 or 2010, whenever it came out, anxiety and depression rates in children are going up every year, right? So that was one connection there that I thought was interesting, and that's really when you were working in college. The social aspect too is I was teaching health, and we had to figure out what is health, right? To these middle school kids, I wanted to define it before we went into it. And the social aspect was one of it too, as one of the buckets. There's like four buckets, right? But to have the social connection being an important key is something I think is not, if it wasn't easy 10 or 12 years ago, it's probably much more
harder
difficult now. Yeah.
I think so, because it's so easy to communicate not face to face.
Yeah.
So I think that I remember talking with them saying, all right, how comfortable are you actually calling someone on the phone?
Yeah.
Because I know you could send an email to follow up on something, but you probably will be the only person that actually follows up on the telephone.
Yeah.
So do that. Like, you're going to stand out. But it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, but
for them, the idea of doing that.
Like, I remember like going to a bank teller when I was probably like, who knows, high school, and that was like an anxious thing for me to like go up there and whatever I was doing, depositing money or asking a question or something. So
and you didn't have the other forms of like, oh, I could just text them.
Yeah,
it was intimidating.
Still something, right? Just little stuff like that. So to think about having to make a phone call at that time, if it was me, I probably would have just said no, and then I wouldn't have gotten the job probably. And then I'd be working in a barn. I'm just kidding. You said you went to Lafayette. I want to know, how did you get? You were coaching at Lafayette as well.
Yeah.
How did you get that job?
Well, so
because I want to know then, you can't just say like, hey, I'm going to coach runners at Lafayette. You obviously have to have some sort of experience in the running world, right?
So rewind. So I ran in high school.
Yes.
I ran in college.
Where are you from?
I'm from New Hampshire.
Okay.
So I had pretty good success in running in high school. So got sort of recruited and ended up running at Colgate. So small D1. I'll say small D1. So I ran competitively in college, and so I had a great experience. Definitely injured, good times, bad times, as always. A lot of injuries. But so following college, I went into teaching, and so I did coach at not the first school that I taught at. I just needed to focus on teaching, but my sort of second stage of teaching, taught in Chicago first, then went to Wisconsin. Long story short, my husband was in grad school in Chicago. That's why we weren't married then at that point, but that's why I was in Chicago. Then went to Wisconsin for 1 year and taught and coached there. So that's kind of where I had my first, I was a head cross country coach and one of the assistant track coaches. So after that, when we moved here, I was thinking, maybe I actually want to do collegiate coaching as a career. They didn't have any money to pay me, so I was a volunteer, but I did a whole lot. They relied on their volunteers a lot. So I worked a lot with the distance kids. I helped with recruiting. I was pretty heavily involved. We didn't have kids yet. So I would go to work, and then I would go and help with cross country afterwards. I figured out through that I didn't want to do collegiate coaching. Just with it's a lot of nights, it's a lot of weekends, and I was thinking about sort of other stages of our life and thinking, I don't know, I like this, but maybe I would like it in a different environment. So then I don't know how many years ago I actually started helping at Wilson. There was a break for sure. I didn't go immediately from coaching at Lafayette. Then I was working at Lafayette as in the career counseling, and just kind of staying occasionally connected to their track and cross country team. I would just come, I'd go to all the races and see them and just keep a connection. And I still keep connected with the coaches, but not really haven't really worked there as part of their program for a while.
Is there when you were first in Chicago there, were you by Naperville at all?
We were not.
Okay.
We were in the city. We were South Side, so Hyde Park area. We were there because the University of Chicago is there, so that's where Dave was in grad school.
I don't know the area at all, but I just know that there's a cool PE program that I was going to talk about from Naperville. So I don't know if you were in that next group or not.
We were right in the city. Yeah.
But then I had a last guy on, Jason Brader. He kind of had a 15+ year career as like a private gym owner.
Yeah.
But then always kind of wanted to be a college strength coach. So he went and he was like a volunteer intern at Alabama. Okay. And then it took him to Louisiana Tech. Yeah. But the problem was he had 3 children. He was gone for 8 months. And it was just seeing them sporadically. So I think he kind of learned that, we just talked about sacrifices, right? So what are you willing to sacrifice in order to do what you want to do? And it sounds like that's tough. I mean, another kid, Steven, who I used to coach, he wanted to be a college strength coach. I'm like, I don't know. Hopefully I didn't discourage him, but I'm like, that's tough because it's job to job. Yep. If you want to climb the ranks, you can't just, the Lehigh Valley only has so much to offer. You're probably going to have to move.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's tough. I think it's a tough world. It's definitely a tough world. And I'm glad I had experience there, but it taught me that I didn't exactly want to do that. Yeah.
But then you got children got in there too, right? Somewhere in the mix there?
No, yes. Yes.
That was a factor probably in not wanting to be away all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So
how do they get a volunteer coach to recruit anyway? Did they send you all over or no?
I mean, I didn't travel. Okay. It was just like phone calls. So, but I would be on the phone with recruits from, 8 to 9:30 at night.
Talking to the kids themselves or the parents or the coaches
kids,
or everybody?
The kids.
Just the kids?
Yeah, the kids.
Just chatting with kids?
Yep, chatting with kids, trying to get them to come to Lafayette. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was fun. I mean, I really liked it, and I went to all the meets with them, and then, I went, I did, with a big pregnant belly, I still, stayed on, when I got, when I was pregnant with Jeffrey, and then once Jeffrey was born, it was tough to leave work and then go there after work. So that's the point where I kind of said, all right, I can't really be a coach anymore here. But again, very much enjoyed my experiences. And then had the kids early, fairly early on in the time I was working at Lafayette in the career counseling. And that was a beautiful, beautiful balance, honestly. And, but I guess it was, so 5 years ago, we got the opportunity to go live in London for about 5 months. Yeah. Dave was doing a study abroad course, leading a study abroad course. And I realized then that I wasn't exactly missing I loved working one-on-one with students. Loved it. Yeah. Like I loved helping them, set goals and figure out what they wanted to do. That was really our program there was like, all right, what do you actually want to do? I was less excited about some of the things like writing cover letters and writing resumes and things like that. And I realized what I was talking with people about on the side all the time was fitness. Right. So I was giving people advice on what they should do for their fitness things. And at the same time, it ebbed and flowed what I was trying to do with my own running at that point. It was not during pregnancies and things like that. I didn't really run a lot at all. So post-college, did you run and compete for recreation, or were you pursuing I was pursuing goals. Yeah. So it was mostly when we lived in Chicago. Yeah. In those kind of 6 years following college, I latched on to kind of a running club. Yeah. And worked at like a specialty running shoe store for one of those years. And they gave us shoes and they gave us it was awesome. And so it was a big running community. And that's when I got serious about marathoning. Like I had done marathons prior to that, but it was kind of when I got serious. I had a pretty big goal then. I wanted to get an Olympic trials qualifying time. I was a few minutes off and it never happened, but so I tried and it was, it was
Where did you try
much
that?
slower
Where did you
than
try to
it
do
is
that?
Now.
Or is it multiple attempts? Or did you you had a few spots throughout the year that you wanted to give it a go?
Well,
how do you plan for that?
So it sort of caught me off guard that I was even close, honestly. Yeah. Because we lived in Chicago, it was easy to run the Chicago Marathon. So done that 4 years in a row or something. Then got a little bit more serious about the training, had a great run of it. I think it was in 2004. And I was like, all right. I was a few minutes off. And so I had my eye on Grandma's Marathon, which is in Duluth, Minnesota. It's a fast course. It's pretty flat or even like the tiniest bit downhill.
Oh, that's cool.
But I got
Wind aided, or
I got an
it's
injury
like one
during
of
the
those track
training.
things. That stinks.
Yeah.
That would have been it
Yeah.
then.
That would have
your
been
big one
it.
if.
That would have.
You don't want to be like my friend's dad who's like, I would have made it to the big leagues
Yeah.
if I didn't throw my arm out.
Yeah.
It's not one of those stories. I'm just kidding.
No, but it was probably another, a story of overtraining,
Yeah.
which is not unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
Story of overtraining, and then we got here, and I still was running and stuff, but and I was running with the kids as we were, I was coaching at Lafayette, but it was only a few years later that then we had kids.
What happens when you get the Olympic time, the qualifying time? Then do you go to the trial or something?
Yeah.
Is that how it works? Is that in Colorado that you would have to run a trial, or like
No,
where is that?
so
Does that change, or-
those travel around. So
Okay.
like this year it was in in Orlando, and just a few weeks ago it was in Orlando. I don't even know where it would have been.
Yeah.
At that point.
But what would you do then in terms of, so obviously, if 1 million people qualify, they would go to the trials, right?
Yeah.
How many people, do you know how many people they whittle it down to actually go to the Olympics?
Oh,
Or
usually 3.
just 3 Olympians?
Just top 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, top 3. Yeah.
So there's always levels, I imagine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those that get the qualifying time would smoke
Don't even have a
99%
chance.
of the population.
Yeah, but don't even
then
have a
when you get
chance.
there,
Yeah.
you get whooped by the real elite, I guess.
That's right. Which is why.
And then those guys or gals could go to Olympics, and then they could get smoked as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I guess there's levels.
Well, and that's why over the last, that was whatever, 18, I don't know how many years ago. I can't do the math right now. But so at that point, for women, the Olympic trials qualifying time for the marathon was 2 hours and 47 minutes. What it was this cycle of it, for the 2024, was 2 hours and 37 minutes.
10
So
minutes.
they dropped off 10 minutes in those years. Because so many people were hitting. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's gone incrementally down. It
Yeah.
went like 47, and it went to 45, maybe 42 or 43. So they had to keep dropping it because so many people
Yeah.
were hitting it. They only want to have a certain number of people in that trials race because it's just kind of too many to deal with. Now, there was some pushback when they did that because people were saying, hey, listen, there's now nothing for like the people that are decent, they're not elite, that, getting for them, like for me, getting a Boston Marathon qualifier, like that, I always have had, like, that's not a goal. It's a goal, but it was easy to reach. So then there's nothing between the Boston Marathon qualifying time and there's nothing else now because there's no way I'm ever going to make it.
Well, wait. So first off, the first part of it, people getting mad is like, lowering the standard.
Yeah, right.
Or
It's good
making
for
the
the
standard
sport.
harder. Listen,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to get faster, I guess.
Exactly.
I guess those are your options.
Well, and it's awesome that so many people were hitting it. Like,
Right, it's like
and
that
you have
mile
to.
thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when they said that first, the
Yeah.
guy broke the mile, the 4 minute
Right,
mile,
right,
right? And all of a
right.
sudden now there's like,
That's
I don't know
right.
how many high school kids could do it, but
Right.
at the time it was unthinkable. And
Right.
yeah, but that, one person does it, and then in the next whatever it was 18 months, it's
Right.
all of these other people to
Exactly.
check it off, right?
Exactly.
So you keep
'Cause then it
pushing the
seems
bar.
possible,
It
right?
does, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you had a goal, you didn't reach the goal.
No.
You had a moment then.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that
so
was hard.
you obviously, I guess you had that now what moment, right? You didn't reach it. You're still running now. I wanted
Yeah.
to come on and talk about because you're going to run a marathon, Boston Marathon in
Yeah.
6 weeks, right?
Yep, yep.
So I think you had a transition, I guess over the course of decades, it seems now, right?
Yeah.
If that was,
Yeah, decades.
before 2010-ish,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I don't know if that,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No,
That
that's
puts it
fine.
in perspective, but like,
But it's good.
there's natural
yeah.
stages over the course of,
Oh, yeah.
of a running career, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
So you have that part of it too, and I also
Yeah.
wanted to, I guess before we get into that,
Yeah.
just backstory, I guess, on the overtraining aspect. And
Yeah.
I was reading a book, it was called Running with the Buffaloes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this guy, Adam
Colorado,
Goucher.
right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
He was the
Goucher.
guy, and I think he was probably running the Olympics around that time,
Yep.
shortly after
Yep.
you were,
Oh,
maybe.
yeah.
Because I think this book was written in that first part of
Yep.
the 2000s.
Yeah. He's
Anyhow.
sort of contemporary with me. Yeah.
And,
yeah.
But the coaches, they had like, I don't want to say it was his journal entries, but they had dialogue with the writer, the
Yeah.
author.
Yeah.
And he's like, 3 kids have stress fractures, 2
Oh.
more are sick.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think, are we doing too much? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
probably.
obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that would be an obvious
Yeah.
one. But
Yeah.
it's like these self-reflection things where like, I think every coach has it where you stay up at night and you're like, wait, did I mess things up here?
Yeah.
Because that's somebody's season, right?
Yeah.
So you've had these injuries, you
Yeah.
said, over the course of time. What are we talking? Are we talking stress fracture? Are we
Yeah.
talking all that type of
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
Lower, where, knee below? how severe?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Knees,
Foot,
ankles, foot,
foot,
feet.
shin, femur.
Femur? What was that?
pelvis.
What was the femur one? Was that a stress fracture or?
Yeah.
Because that's apparently the most difficult bone to
Yeah.
fracture.
So the only injuries that I have had
Yeah.
have been bone injuries. So, this is something that now I'm very passionate about, because when I was younger, nobody was talking about things of
bone density,
of bone density and
Yeah.
overtraining and the signs of overtraining. Nobody
Yeah.
was talking about that.
Do
In
you know if that
fact,
triad came out at all? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Was that
It was
talked about
after.
at all?
It was
I figured.
after.
I thought it was like, yeah.
well, because I can even remember people on my team saying, well, if you're getting your cycle, then you're not training hard enough.
Yeah. Oh, how about that
So
one?
yeah, so I talk, I've talked to the Lafayette students about this a lot, and so what ended up happening, multiple stress fractures through college. Finally, post college, when I had another one training for that, a doctor was like, hey, we should probably check your bone density. I had osteopenia,
Yeah.
so I had precursors to osteoporosis when I was 24. That is not right.
So yeah, and then that triad too that they talk about, I think they call it disordered eating, but it's
Yep.
really just not. I think just being deficient,
Underfueled. Yeah, underfueled.
So you have that, then
Yep.
that could lead to, and then you have the physical activity stuff, right? But then
Yep.
that could, so you have disordered eating, you have the loss of period,
That's right.
and then the osteopenia, right? Which
Yep.
is the precursor, probably. I guess
To
the first step
osteoporosis.
to
Yep.
osteoporosis. So you're
Yep.
24 years old. Your
And I
bone
was like-
density is very brittle now.
Yeah.
I asked you
Yeah.
if you knew Megan
Yes.
previously.
Yeah.
She had a similar path.
Similar,
path.
I bet.
Terrible experience. Her starting college where it was like, if you're that comment that somebody made too, right? We talked about one coach that could have been a teammate, whatever, but one coach might say a million things to somebody.
Yeah.
But in Megan's case, somebody brought up, hey, if you lost a few pounds, and then that sent her down a path of
Yeah.
always being hyper conscious and disordered
Yeah.
eating and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right? That coach could have said a million things, but he might have even forgotten, or she might have even forgotten that they said
right.
that to her, but
That's
that
right.
changed the course of her life for decades, right?
Absolutely.
So,
It's
it
awful.
started a path that just losing a few pounds would make her faster, and then next thing you
Right.
know, wheels come off, right?
Blows
Somebody
up.
says to you, hey, if you're still having your period, you're not working hard enough. So what's a kid supposed to do when you're 19 or 20? Like,
Exactly.
I guess I'm not pushing it. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts. And I didn't have, I feel lucky I didn't have coaches telling me to lose weight. Like
Yeah.
that didn't happen to me, but there was enough of
There's
talk
still those little
amongst
comments.
our team.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And even if people, and those comments came from no one knew, right? Like they had heard that from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know they were being misleading. They thought, oh, well, this is the truth, right? You probably won't get your period if you're training hard. That's just a reality. So I talk to our athletes about that now. I'm like, no, here's what's normal. Like,
Yeah.
it is not like, if this is happening to you, let's go, let's figure something out. Let's go talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to be, I don't want them
24
to be
with,
dealing-
osteopenia, right?
Yeah.
So was there any strength training going on for you in those first 25 years of life there?
Here and there, not a whole lot, I will say. Like I was kind of into going to the gym sometimes in a couple of years of high school, nothing very strategic. At Colgate, we did have a strength training program. We did, so we went a couple times a week. It was mostly year round.
Were you using weights? I mean, I see stuff now where I feel like sports like swimming and sport like
Yeah.
gymnastics, they do their strength training. They call it conditioning. It's like this
Yeah.
body weight stuff. They're like
Yeah.
doing sit-ups and fluttering
Yeah.
their feet around. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know if that's real resistance training.
Yeah.
Were you using weights and stuff in college?
We were doing squats and things. I mean, and it ebbed and flowed. I did have a coaching change while I was there, so we added the strength stuff more in my second half
Yeah.
of my experience there. But we would use a squat rack. I don't think I was that into it though. Like I love it now, but so it was part of our experience. It wasn't a huge part of our experience.
So one of those things where you didn't know if it would serve you as a runner?
Yeah.
Like how's this gonna,
Yes, exactly.
who cares if I could bench press more, if I,
Exactly.
Well, that was one thing too that I always thought about where, with the endurance athlete, right? It's like, eventually, in that book, right?
Yeah.
Running with
Yeah,
the Buffaloes,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was tons of volume to the
Yeah.
point that he was hurting people, right?
Yeah.
But then towards the end of the year, it was, we're just going speed and power
Yeah,
and it's sprint
right.
work. So it's like,
Right.
if you have to take on the hill and cross country
Yep.
and all things are
Yep.
equal except the fact that you might lift weights and do some stuff, you might pass them on
Oh,
the hill
yeah.
because you
Oh,
got that
yeah.
ability. Or
Oh, yeah.
So, I think there's a place for it, but
And that resilience too.
but I guess you need that explained to you also, right? Where like, as a
Yep.
college kid, you were just like, how's this serving me?
That's
you
right.
don't know, but maybe if
That's
somebody
right.
would have explained something and broke it down in a
Right.
way that maybe made it
Right.
click, right? That could have shifted some things.
Yeah.
But
And our coach would actually come with us. Like which was, I remember this, he would be the one in the weight room with us. Whereas
Yeah.
now in college, there's strength and conditioning coaches.
Yeah.
So
you
he
had that
knew,
at the high school too, right? I
we
mean,
do. It's awesome.
and it's good for the
oh
coaches
my
not to
gosh.
be the only voice. Where
so
the
good.
sport coaches, where you could just be like,
It's
all right,
so good.
go lift for 35
I'm
minutes.
so
and
happy
whatever.
about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, we have a connection with St. Luke's, and it's
Yeah.
it's wonderful. Like the kids are loving it. So,
Good.
So I'm so glad because initially I was sort of trying to get them into it, and then when this position came, I'm like, great, now I don't have to be, because I wanted them all. I knew it was so good for them to not just be, I mean, when you're running, it's pretty repetitive, right? So they need those different forms of movement to prevent injury. And
I think there's a season for everything too sometimes, where it's like, hey, you don't have to run all year round. Like, take
Exactly,
a moment,
exactly.
you can lift some weights, you can play another
That's
sport,
right.
you can do both. Like,
it's good for them.
Yeah, and I think it keeps
It's
your
good.
mind, the body healthier, I think, and
Yeah.
then also just keeps the mind fresh and not like
Absolutely.
done with the repetitive stuff, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we got that part here. We have strength training. What was I going with now?
Yeah.
So they have it in the high school.
Yep.
Oh, this is what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Now you have your children are middle school, high school, right?
Middle school, high school, yeah.
And you're involved in the running programs
Yep.
of both children. I know your
Yep.
son is. Is your daughter in
Yeah,
cross country and all that?
yeah. She joined this year. Yep.
So let's think here. There's two people I talk to, so
Yeah.
this is going to be a recurring question.
Okay.
Kind of.
All right.
And I'll just share my thing, right?
Yeah.
Emmy's out here all the time with me.
Yeah.
She just turned 6 yesterday,
Yeah.
which is
Aw,
awesome. So happy
happy
birthday to
birthday,
Emmy,
Emmy.
right?
Yeah.
And so she'll play around, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not getting in the way of anything. Do what you want.
Yep.
You want to go
Yep.
jump some rope, or you want to
Yeah.
lay on the mat?
Do what
I
you
don't
wanna do.
care.
Right.
Right. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you to do anything. Sometimes then 8-year-olds will be in here, and
Yeah.
she'll want to join the party a little
Yeah.
bit, and I'm like,
Yeah.
now just more recently, I'm like, yeah, we have a choice, right? You can play around, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Or do you want me to coach you?
Right.
And she'll say, sometimes I want to be,
Right.
you help me, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
It's good
So-
you're asking her that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to make this place like you have to come work out.
Right,
Because I
right,
like
that's
spending
tricky.
time with her.
Yeah.
And sometimes in my schedule, I chose a profession where I work when she's home sometimes, and it stinks.
Yeah.
So if she could come out here and hang out,
Yeah. But on her
Middle
terms.
school.
sort
Always
of.
her
Yeah,
terms.
her terms. Yeah.
right? So one person. Sorry, Megan, I'll bring you up every
Yeah.
episode, but she was like,
It's all right.
do I want an anxious kid or a happy kid? So she has this crazy drive, right? She's very tough-minded.
Yep.
She doesn't feel that her daughter has that, who's 10.
Yeah.
So she's trying to understand, am I going to be, do I get on her about it, or do I let her do things at her own rate?
Yeah.
And then she's a therapist, and she's like, I will create anxiety in my child
Yes, she
if
knows.
I'm over.
She knows the clinical
But she
thing.
still
Yeah.
has that.
Yeah.
But she still has the drive. Another guy I was just talking to was
Yeah.
like, he can't really sit back. He's having a hard time. He has 3 kids. What about you? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you separate the two? Do you let others deal with your children primarily, or are you in? And then does it come home?
Yeah.
Do the conversations come home, I guess.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I think about this stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So I've been trying over time to, I wouldn't say I'm hands off, but I'm trying not to, I want them to ask,
Yeah.
right? I want them to ask as opposed to me giving or saying. Like, I think that my kids have both come to this sport. I think they actually genuinely did come on their own. Not that maybe like, oh, okay. I think actually here's what's really fortunate. So Mike Brown, who's our head coach, we're great friends. So if anyone talked to them a lot about doing it, it was him more than me, which has been great because I didn't ever want to be saying, hey, you should do this, or
Should is a word that is
rough.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a rough word. Yeah, and I think Jeffrey on his own has he decided to stop playing soccer and just do running and lifting and things like that. Hallie on her own I wanted her to do it because I knew mentally it'd be great for her.
Yeah.
But I said I'm not forcing you. She came to it on her own. It's hard though. I'm not gonna lie. It's hard because I know too much. I see too much, and so I try my best when we're at practice to not focus on them very much because it's better that way. Like, I mean, not I don't ignore them, but like I have a whole team. I got to talk to all of them. Sometimes the conversations do come home, but I'm trying to make it be from their question to me as opposed to me to them.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you
'Cause I
sure
don't
you want this? Are you sure you want me to answer it? Because
yeah. It's really, it's hard. I think that although I feel like it's going pretty well, like, it's a challenge. I aim to coach all these kids equally.
Yeah.
Whether they're my own kid or someone else.
And you were
But of
doing it
course,
before
it's-
you were working with the program
Well,
before they were involved, or were you involved as a parent and like, hey, I run and I'm just going
I
to be here?
think,
So I can...
how did it happen? I mean, I knew the head coach prior to the kids being of age that they could be involved. I think I started coming around maybe the year before Jeffrey could be involved.
Yeah.
So because we run a combined program, so starting when he was in 7th grade, I think at that point I started coming like a little bit. Like I came to help out like once a week or something. So it's been a gradual increase in time that I've spent, and honestly, that's been more to do with like, hey, I'm not going to come here after practice because Hallie's coming home off the bus, so kind of thing. And then when she started getting involved, I was like, oh, I guess I can be there more because they're both there. I wasn't going to sacrifice that,
Well,
so
we
it's
talked about
built
the time
over
thing
time
too, right?
Yeah.
Where having a lifestyle that you want, and it's like you have some freedom, and that you can be there, and I think that's good. You could actually spend some time with your kids, but then also they're involved in other stuff, so you're not coaching everything.
That's right.
Which is good too.
That's
I think.
right.
So
That's right.
it's like you could be, I guess, a parent during that season, really. But if you coach them, fine. You also get that extra time because if you didn't, when would you see them? They're at school, they're at practice, they're home at what, 6 o'clock? Whatever.
I mean, I love it.
You go to bed.
I love it, but I know that it's really important to keep all the things that you said. With you not making it come home too much, not having additional expectations on them that I would have on anybody else. Because I want it to stay positive. I would hate to have my involvement in it. And if I ever saw my involvement in it deteriorating their experience, I would change something. Because it's not my experience. It is. I love it, but this is about them. So right now it feels really great. I love that they don't hate that I'm involved with the thing they want to do. Like I am happy about that. So I hope that means I'm keeping a decent balance of it. But like you said, I love that I get to spend the afternoon in the same place that they are.
It's nice too. The temperatures are good, right? You get outside, and everybody is so encouraging and running, I think, right? So
they really are. And it's a big team, so it's easy to focus on. Like it's easy to not feel like, oh, I'm here with my kid. We've got a big team, so there's
you're not
lots
just
of kids to
coaching your
talk
kid
with.
the whole time, telling them to hurry
up
and all that.
If anything, I'm like, go do your thing. Yeah.
I've had these moments of thinking, like, I've shared these stories before, but like playing some sort of lawn game, right? And then you feel this competitive thing come out of nowhere where you're like, Jesus, I'm just throwing a frisbee around. Why am I trying to destroy the opposition? And I don't like that feeling of like when competition brings out like the ego side of things. But then I remember watching, this is like little kid soccer stuff, right? And you're just like, there's some people that are yelling, and I've felt the need to be like, hey, pay attention, but I'm like, I just have to shut up. I mean, Emmy's like 4 years old at the time, and if she wants to go kick some grass while the coach is talking to her and not pay attention, like, it's not my job to so, and I always think too, like, it's hard to, when you think you could do better, but you can't be involved in everything.
I know.
Like, I'm like, hey, I could coach this team better, like, I might have never played soccer, right? But I think I could do a better job. I'm not saying this is our example, because this guy was pretty great at soccer. Did you ever see Soccer Shots?
This
guy was great. Coach Bass was great,
Okay,
especially with little kids. He's awesome. And like, I can't coach better than that guy, but you see some other things, right? Whether it's baseball, and you're like, you know what, I think I could do better, but you can't be involved in everything, so you have to just learn to step away, I guess.
Or you might hear how they're talking to the kids, and like, some things are rough to hear. Some things are really rough to hear.
What do you do there then?
Oof.
When did they come home and like, hey, coach told me, I guess, what happens if it was that thing about, hey, girls are telling me if I'm getting I know you're not experiencing this one yet, but let's say something does happen like that in 10, however many years, or hey, somebody told me I needed to lose weight to get faster, when do you know to like, hey, I need to go talk to this coach or administrator or something, right? Some of these offenses are probably more harsh than others, but like, somebody's cursing, somebody is not being nice. Like, is there a time? First off, too, you're also involved in a school board, and you were a teacher, and you worked at the university, so I think you have, I forgot to bring that part up too, because I always like to talk about schools, but like, so you have that aspect too, right? Where there's a lot of stuff going on, and you're pretty well informed on.
I get to see it from different points of view, which I love. Like, I love but it's tricky sometimes. Right?
Well, it's hard to find coaches too. Sometimes, not sometimes, probably all the time, right? Seems that at Wilson with cross country, you have a great guy in there.
We've got a great team
that has built a good system. I've coached wrestling at Salkin. I saw like firsthand how to build the program from the youth level on up. But then on the other side too, I've coached at a school where like you just see the turnover. So it's like you're not getting like men's lacrosse or whatever it is. Some sports just don't have a fair shot. Every year they're cycling through. Why am I talking about that? I don't know. But we're talking about finding good coaches. We're talking about what to do when, like, what is out of line, I guess, as a coach, How do you tread that?
Tough.
Do you ever go home like, hey, I think I might have said something I shouldn't have.
For
Do you
sure,
ever have those moments?
for
Yeah.
sure, definitely.
So
because,
it's not just me then. I'm
no,
just making
for
sure.
sure, because
Yeah.
you think that everything you say has so much power,
Yeah.
or potentially has so much
It does,
power.
yeah, I agree 100%.
But I think then we have to be kind to ourselves and remember, okay, we can go back the next day and say, hey, let's talk about this again,
Yeah.
because I'm not sure I communicated effectively, and I think that's where we have to show we're human, right? And because like we were talking about a little while ago, not like in athletics, right? Like there's so many variables. There's no set exact rules of what is going to lead to X, right? Like it depends on the kid, it depends on the person, it depends on the personality. You could have the best training plan that might work for this person, but be terrible for this one. So I think then that's an opportunity to say, hey, I think I made a mistake, or let's try something different, or let's talk about this in a different way. But that's definitely happened where I say, oh my gosh, I wonder if my saying that is that athlete still thinking about that? How did that impact them? For sure, I think about that stuff all the time.
Well, I think it's important, one, to be aware.
Yeah.
Two, to know that, hey, I don't have all the answers.
Yep.
And not pretend that you do, because that's the thing too, where like, just coaching a variety of sports, it's like, do as I say, because I'm the coach. I'm like, that's not good. Number one, because if a kid asks why, you got to have.
Not just because I said so.
Right. You need to know why. You need to be able to explain the why. I also like this part of where, like, Emmy goes to a Quaker school, and they don't really have a hierarchy there. It's like, you're a human and I'm a human. So I'm not Mr. Whatever. They just call me Coach. They call me Chris, and somehow Coach Chris became my name there.
Right, great.
But that is it, right? And they call their teachers by the first names, and it's not a sign of disrespect, but it's just that, we're human, and, we don't believe that anybody should be held. But anyway, so I like that too with coaching, where it's like, I will work with you, but they have to work with you too. It's like,
that's right.
I am your coach, and I do know a lot, but I might not know everything, and we're gonna have to try things, right? We talk about just in your own personal life, like just continue to try and being on a quest to improve stuff, right?
That's right.
And I think every year that you coach, it should be that. You should never really accept that I'm good.
Right.
I'm good.
Use You can't just like write a workout plan and use that every season. And I think we try.
Kids evolve, which we talked about.
That's right.
Ideas evolve,
That's
and your knowledge should evolve too,
That's
right?
Yeah. And we need to open. I hope that I aim to. Probably doesn't always happen, to create an environment where like we want to hear from the kids. Like, how are you feeling? Like, don't just we're gonna tell you our suggestions for the day. But if you feel some way, you gotta tell us that, because we don't know how you feel.
Yeah.
We can only see what's happening as we see you run or see you doing something. But I think we aim to keep those lines of communication open. Like, you have to tell us how you feel, because this is only an idea, and every kid is different too. That's the challenge of high school coaching, right? Like, you've got kids who are extremely goal oriented, very performance driven, high achieving, doing really well, and then you have kids who are brand new to the sport. So then you have to be flexible. You got to give every one of those kids time. The new kid is just as important as the one who's going to go to states, but that's hard because you just spread thin.
Yeah, I think you raise the level of your team if you could lift the bottom up. So the bottom five, if you get the bottom five better, I think it's going to then push the middle five.
That's right.
Then the middle five then might have the opportunity to push the top. So I think you have to coach them all. That was a big thing of mine. It's like, know everybody's name. That was always important. Like, just because they're new and they might quit the second week, it doesn't mean that you don't take a moment to talk to them and see what's going on in their world, right? That's another thing too. It's like, you don't even know what these kids are up. You don't know what goes on outside of school and stuff. So you can't really make any kind of assumptions with that. I also like this blank slate thing too, where it's like, there's a kid PE stuff, right? Totally disrespectful one day. Then I saw him the next, and I was like, you cannot let yesterday carry over into today. I'm not gonna treat this kid any differently just because he was disrespectful one day, right? It's like, this is a new day, it's a new slate.
You don't know what happened when he woke up, right?
I don't know where he lives. I don't know what goes on in his house, right? So it's like, I think you need to look at it. And kids are like evolving too, right? They're I don't know. Their brains are getting molded every day. So I always like that one too, and I don't know why. That just came to mind there, but individual plans and talking to the kids. Now there's a gymnast that's in here. They push. Something doesn't look right. You bring it up, and they're like, "No, it's fine." I'm like, "It's not fine," because I just saw that you're not running right, or I saw that you're doing this afterwards. So to get the honest answer out of kids, where it's like, when is being too tough? Because running, you'll break down.
And that's a really good point, because sometimes
like pulling back as a coach
they're going to be
important.
because I think I've seen they're probably more afraid to say, "Hey, I'm not feeling so good."
Yeah.
So we do have to be very in tune with them, and what you said is totally right. We have to rein them in.
Yeah.
Like, because if we don't, they really will run them. I mean, some of them will run themselves to the ground. Because they
People
think
do it
that every
20s,
time.
30s, and their 40s.
Exactly.
I mean, we think a 15-year-old's not going to want to do the same.
That's right. So it is our job to pull them back and say, no, like, we're going to take the day off today. And some of them are going to say, no, I don't want to, but it's our job to hold them back.
It's on the practice schedule, off.
Yeah,
We're following it, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is hard too. Coaching, you just want to kind of make sure you're progressing too, so you have to be cognizant that like the rest and recovery, which is something we talked about before. Where I think in your life now, right, that's been a big part of it. So
huge.
It
Something that's taken a long
coach.
time to learn.
Right. A lot of injuries, a lot of stress for athletes, I guess.
Yeah.
Going back to that, did you ever get your bone density checked like after that?
Yeah. So I've improved it. Yeah.
Improved?
Yep.
Over years when you're supposed to not improve things, right? In theory, bone density would go down, right?
Exactly. So it's not. What I learned is you can fix it.
Yeah.
You can fix it. And so
we're talking diet and exercise?
Yeah, diet
basically,
and I mean I have to think that because I've been doing way more strength stuff, I have to think that has helped. You know, that helps with bone density. But then just being really conscious of vitamin D and calcium.
Vitamin D.
Yeah.
Vitamin D. I remember learning of this relationship with vitamin D and iron where your body won't absorb the iron that you're consuming if your vitamin D levels are low, stuff like that. So does that play into that as well? Or?
And those go hand in hand. So I learned, my vitamin D was low and my iron was low. So you got to make sure but you can't take them at the same time. And
that stuff I don't know, but I just knew that there's some sort of relationship where your body's not going to absorb, no matter what you do. You can supplement, but if your vitamin D stays in the whatever, the basement,
low
range, you're not going to be able to fix that iron thing. So vitamin D seems to be the cure-all for a lot of stuff.
A lot of things. We need it. We need that vitamin D. So
that's interesting. I mean, remember we talked about. I forget more than I remember. That might have been in there somewhere, but for some reason that sounds kind of new to me with the relationship that vitamin D has on bone density. But
because I don't fully understand, but I think vitamin D helps you absorb calcium.
There it is.
So even if you're taking calcium, if you don't have enough, and we only get vitamin D from certain sources, which is why a lot of people have to take it as a supplement, and especially in the northern hemisphere, don't get enough sunlight, all that. We get it from the sun, but if we don't have it regularly.
We don't have sun. It's March in Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
We're not seeing Seriously, we're not seeing sun at all, really.
We're not. So that has. It's not. My doctor says I'll get a repeat DEXA scan every 5 years now or something. It's not fabulous, but it's not terrible anymore. So I just have to keep working at it and keep doing the things I'm doing, keep up with the weight bearing exercise, keep making sure I'm eating right and taking the supplements and
What have you done with your mileage when you're running? Is it the mileage? Has there been a decrease? Have you knocked off 10%, 20% of total miles in a week, say? Or has that stayed the same, or what are you doing there? Especially, let's just say getting ready for Boston Marathon. Compared to marathons in the past. I want to know training frequency. How many days a week? Is it the same?
No.
Or the miles down?
Frequency, definitely not the same. So back, I would say when I was most serious last time there have been a couple segments. So back when I was in my 20s, I was probably in those, let's say 2 years where I was kind of really serious about it. I was probably running not all the time, but I've never been super high mileage, but maybe 60 miles a week, maybe 65. But no strength training at that point in my 20s, nothing. Then a couple of years ago, tried to be serious about it again. Had a pretty decent marathon. I was more probably 45 to 50, but probably still 6 days a week. The way I started this training cycle, and kind of for the last couple of years, actually since a year ago, much less frequent, more 3 or 4 days a week, whole lot more strength stuff, more cross training, riding my spin bike, getting in the pool.
With the spin bike workouts, what is the goal, to get some sort of aerobic training?
So there's some different ideas about that, and I'm trying to figure out what's best. So I tried one theory of all right, if you're only running 3 days a week, then those times you're doing those cross training workouts on the bike, they should be hard because you need to make up for it. Well, I'm not sure. For me, I don't think that's what I need. I think what I need that bike to be is a replacement of an easy run. And so I'm keeping my heart rate low.
Less pounding.
That's right. And so keeping my cadence high, keeping my heart rate low.
What's low? 60% or 50%? Like what, is there like a way to think of how does one define low?
Low, I mean like, okay, zone 1, if you're looking at like heart rate zones, so, or zone 1 or zone 2, so
55?
what percent of my maximum heart rate? Okay, so for me, my max heart rate is probably like 170 or something. So if I'm on the bike, I want it to be below 130.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how I'm looking at it now, and I think it's working. But then keeping the cadence really high, so it's more like running, so low resistance, and just taking the place of an easy run.
Do you watch something or listen to something or no?
Yeah, listen to things. I'll listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I'll
There you
listen
go.
to Chris's
Good.
podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know what I do? I put it on like double speed so I could get through them quicker.
Yeah.
It's my,
Yeah.
Well, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I try to hammer through those at a speed.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't though. Maybe I'm not absorbing as much. But so we have.
So less
you can
frequency.
still train your lungs though. You can still
Yeah,
train the lungs, but
exactly.
you're not, and you're giving your body a break.
And you're using
From
different
the-
muscles,
from the running
frankly,
kind of-
which is
yeah.
great. You know, but I think here's what I'm still trying to figure out. I'm sure like you've seen a lot about how like most people run too fast most of the time that they run.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of press out there about, in most cases, everyone needs to slow down more of their training. And I do agree with that. Like people will often be what they call in the gray zone. So they're not like in a recovery zone. They're not pushing like VO2 max speed or anything like that, but they're in this gray zone where it might be difficult to talk. It might be difficult to carry on a conversation. That's kind of always where they'll do their running. So what I'm kind of interested to like play around with is like, okay, what does it do to your body to have a little bit more, can you have higher frequency of running if you're really conscious about keeping those easy days easy? If you really follow like the 80-20 rule, like 80% of your running should be easy, low heart rate, be able to talk all the time. Only 20% should be hard, you know, and probably only like 10% should be real hard, depending on what you're training for. If you really follow that, how does that impact? You know, because if your recovery runs are not actually recovery runs, that's going to break you down. When I talked to you a few weeks ago, I had been trying to do this plan that was strictly 3 days of running, other days biking. I was adding in strength. They were like, do strength if you want to. But those 3 days were all hard, like all quality. So one of the days was like pretty fast speed, like 800 repeats, 1,200 repeats, mile repeats.
Where would you do that? At a track or on a treadmill?
I would just do it on the roads, on a flat piece of road.
I've seen you do that.
Yeah,
then,
flat piece of road.
Right.
But it was like trying to get it at close to like
800
mile
meters.
pace, like trying to get it close to mile pace. And then another day was more like threshold. So that's
for the marathon?
For the marathon. Another day was like threshold training. So a pace that feels what they call comfortably hard, something you could keep for roughly an hour, but you feel like you're pushing it. And then the other day was a long run. So that felt all right for me for about a month. And then a few weeks ago, I was like, like I felt like I was stuck, like my legs just felt, I think it was just way too much intensity.
Yeah.
And maybe that would work if I didn't have 30 years of running on my legs. You know, I've got a lot of years of running on my legs now. So maybe if I was newer to running, that would be fine. But I think just the cumulative effect of running over time, I've kind of bagged that plan, and I'm doing. So I've been saying for the last week or so, I've been trying maybe 4 or 5 days of running, but most of them are very easy. Like it makes me feel like, okay, like should I really be going this slow? Like, but it feels great. Like it feels like I'm actually recovering. And so as I mentioned to you, I feel like I'm still playing around. I'm still experimenting to try to figure it out. But I think too much intensity is, at least for me, is not so good.
I think it's for everything, right? You got to keep the easy days easy, or else everything just blends into, you know, or the hard days have to be hard. So you can't have your hard days be moderate, then your easy days also be moderate.
And then they all come together.
It's all the same.
It's got to be this, right? It's got to be this.
Do you know that Phil Maffetone? Did I bring this guy up before? He's like this eccentric guy in Arizona, but he trains aerobic runners. But he'll go 180 minus your age.
Okay.
And then he wants you to stay 60% there, so he doesn't
so
want
you
your
won't
heart
get
rate.
too high.
Yeah, and he says the goal then is to nudge basically you want to do this pace, right, where, let's say you have to walk a mile and because your heart rate gets too spiked. Eventually you want to nudge that to, all right, now I did 1.5 miles and then 3 miles. So you want to be able to keep the heart rate constant, whatever it is, let's just say 130. And you want to be able to extend the time that you stay in 130. And if you're able to do that, then you would have better, lung capacity maybe is the right word, I don't know, but
Yeah, it increases your aerobic capacity. Like the longer you can keep that, like what is a conversational pace, right? Or something like that then, because truly that marathon, when you run a marathon, you have to be at, maybe not conversational pace, but you have to be at aerobic pace. If you're running for too long.
And another thing was, he cuts the miles down big time, but might only have his runners do like nose breathing only.
Oh,
So you still get this cardiovascular effect, but you don't get the physical breakdown. Another thing too is that if your heart rate gets spiked while you're running, you're not going to recover as well. Because it's more taxing on the heart and the body. So he keeps the heart rate down low. So at the end of that workout, you're still feeling fresh. The next day, you're still feeling kind of fresh. It is interesting. And he has this huge book. I didn't read the endurance book. I only read like let's say it's 600 pages. I read like the 125-page guide, which has different ideas in there. But so it's Phil Maffetone.
I wonder if he talks a lot about diaphragmatic breathing. That's something that I've tried to learn a lot about over the last few years, especially like post-pregnancy and like I had C-sections and things. And so I had to like relearn how to breathe, honestly, like, because just I was messed up and that I had to relearn. And like when I was in high school, I never thought about how you breathe.
Well, I'm trying to teach middle school kids about breathing.
How to breathe,
nobody gives a crap. I'll tell you that.
They do not, because they're like, I'm just gonna breathe, right? But now when we're older,
there's no wrong way to breathe because I'm still alive.
That's right. But there really is.
There's a more efficient way then.
There really is.
Nitpicking my language.
Yes. Yes.
I know the kids.
See, we know too much.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
You obsess about it.
We're doing this project too. I'm going to throw it off your brain here because we just kind of started these past 2 weeks where these middle school kids are going to write the book. It's a middle schooler's guide to health. They say.
Cool.
So they're gonna. We all had as a class 19 things say. Then I was like, hey, circle 3 that you might want to do, and then today was like, hey, pick one, right? And then from there they're going to do. I'm thinking like a paragraph and then like 7, a little bullet point thing, right? You think this is a good idea?
Yeah.
So they're going to write the book.
I love it.
On how to, and then maybe they'll present it. Maybe they won't, but each year that the school has me come back, I'm just going to try to expand this thing and see if it can be a cool guide.
Ownership of it. I think,
the school prides themselves on like project-based learning.
I love it.
So everything that they do is geared around a project. So I'm like, how am I? One project was going to be like create your own training plan and accomplish a goal, but then I'm like, some kids want to sleep better, anti-anxiety strategies or something. So I'm like, maybe this will serve because if I want to get stronger. I also might want to learn some anti-anxiety strategies. So we're trying to put something together here where they take ownership and like do some research. You think
and to
kind
of help, and like, if you're gonna put it as like, hey, what would you share with someone who was sort of new or coming up? Like, what would you have wanted to know when you were younger?
I'm on the fence because the lady that knows this project-based learning, like, she's like the go-to person. She's like, you got to figure out what the end product's going to be because then she said, it's like those Socratic questionings where you lead them to come up to the answer. She's like, you're going to have to guide them through that, which I'm okay with that part. But then I'm like, do we create a case study where like they might be the case study? Like, hey, Christopher's been only sleeping 4.5 hours a night. He's eating late at night. He's on his phone. That. So like, should I have them create a story and then how to fix that story, or do I do an intro guide of like, hey, you have to tell us why sleep is important for a kid of your age, how much they should be getting, all that stuff. So I'm still figuring out if I want to. Maybe I do both. I don't know. Maybe it expands where it's like, this is why these things are important. Here's an example of what some kids go through. Here are some useful tips. You got any feedback for me here? I'm still working on this.
Well, so if you give them like a sort of, what if they come up with like a research question, right? Like, all right, here's the thing I want to kind of gather information about. And if they look at it as like a gathering information process. With, okay, what is the question I'm trying to answer at the end? Right? I think then they can like tackle it piece by piece. And so then,
that's what I'm
right?
thinking,
I think that would be good. That would be awesome. And then they learn that, hey, how do you actually come to figure stuff out is by asking questions and by gathering information.
Yesterday we're talking about nutrition stuff and they have their computer. So I'm like, hey, look this up. But then the one kid's like, you just go to the Department of Health and Human Services. And I'm like, hold on, pull it up. But I don't think that's where you're going to go for that information. So now they're going to learn like, and we talked about things
different
like
sources of info.
And also like, there's a food pyramid, right? And it's like, you know what? I don't know if this serves everybody the same, right?
Probably not.
Trying to encourage the kids to be like, everybody's an individual, right? I mean, there's the base of this thing is a bunch of grains and all that. I was like, if I eat that, I feel terrible. So I choose not to eat that, right? So it's like, we have to figure out what works for us. And it's at a place where I think Yeah, I don't know. Kids are open-minded, which is nice, and I think everybody's, again, a lot of stories like, hey, my mom had this happen, or this happened to my brother, or my dad has this. So
right.
I think they kind of understand that, like, maybe these general guidelines are not the best, and you have to do what is best for you as an individual.
Right.
And yeah, so I'm trying to explore things that way too. Where
I think that's cool, because I think one of the things that's probably going to serve them really well with like there's so much information out there now that people can find. So for them to go through this process, they're going to figure out like some information that you find is going to be helpful, some is going to be junk, and you have to be able to sift through that. And there's so much noise out there. So I think that's like a great thing for them.
That's what I was too. I'm like, where do you go for information? And
like, what are trusted sources?
Yeah, and I'm like, because you could literally find somebody, say you go to social media, right? Somebody could say that the carnivore diet has changed my life and I'm no longer diabetic and all this stuff.
Right.
And then somebody could say that this vegan diet did the exact same thing, right? It's like, so what do you do?
All
How do you know?
individual.
How do you know?
Yeah.
And
it all depends.
also that like, hey, just because it says, maybe .gov at the end, it might not be the best thing for you, or so it's like, I don't know how to, that's a tough too, because that's hard. Another one I've ran into as a parent was like, hey, I don't want you, as a young girl, say a middle school girl, like, I don't want you to have some sort of, this is good or bad, right? So it's like, my mother told me that it's okay that I could eat this and it's not going to do this and that. But then in her mind, she's like, eating cake is not good. So I'm trying to figure out ways to like not step on parents' toes, not step on whatever, and then also be like, you could eat nutritious food. You could eat things that nourish you and not have a body image problem too at the same time. It's like, it doesn't have to be good. Yeah, I know.
Food is such a tough one.
And I asked the lady that was head of the curriculum yesterday, I was like, hey, this is what happened. This is the guide. Here. She's like, well, what are you teaching? I'm teaching that you could have both. You could eat healthy and not have a body image, right? That's what we're trying to work towards. But
it's tough.
And then the individual doesn't know how to go. The communication thing that we talked about in the beginning. How do you bring these things up to your parents? How do you bring these things up to a teacher? It's not easy. So because at the end of the day, most people think it's just me.
It's tough. It's really tough, and I think we're hyper aware of every kind of conversation, right, that we have. Like, some people will say, hey, you shouldn't ever talk about, what. I've heard people say you shouldn't ever talk about what your kid is eating. Like, literally say nothing about it. And I see where they're coming from, because I can think of, like those like little things that someone might say that then really stick with somebody, right? But then, it is important to teach healthy and balanced habits. So I'm not going to lie, I struggle with that, because, if my kid is...
I'm not going to say sodas, I don't drink it, that's what I say.
Right.
I'm like, listen, I'm not drinking soda. Why?
Right.
Too much sugar for me, and it doesn't make me feel good.
Doesn't make you feel good, right?
I don't know.
So if you keep it of like, hey, this is how it makes me feel, as opposed to you should, that's probably a better way.
I don't know.
Right? I think it probably is.
But I'm not going to say, hey, it's okay.
Right.
Some kid was talking about pilk, a combination of Pepsi and milk.
Oh, God.
Right. Apparently this is a thing. And I'm like, listen, man, I'm not drinking it. You wouldn't even try it. No, I'm not. Things like that. So it's so hard. I try to be like, I guess you got to be cognizant of it all. It is hard.
Yeah, it's really hard, because I think what we probably know is, hey, if they're like craving that, if they're constantly wanting sugar, that probably says something about the rest of their diet, right? Yeah. And so, like, I've been trying to teach my daughter about carefully, like, without not saying like you should or shouldn't do this, but just, hey, if your body is feeling nourished, if you're getting enough protein, if you're getting enough fat, if you're getting enough carbohydrates, you might not have particular cravings for something. Like, just test it out with yourself. Like, experiment with yourself, see how it makes you feel. Because I know from experience how it makes, if you don't eat a balanced meal, you might feel that way. You might go for something, but it's very tricky.
Yeah.
It is very tricky with food.
Well, it's everything that you talked about with your training. You're still experimenting with things. You're trying to figure out ways to optimize your stuff. I think it's, as long as you're on like a constant quest, and maybe just encourage that with your kids too, to like, I don't know. You don't always accept. Yeah, it's like not always accepting what's out there. It's challenging ideas, seeing what fits for you.
See what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
See what makes you feel good.
That might be the best thing. And I did want to bring this up too before we wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
I see your husband flying by here. I see you running. You were talking about not encourage. I was listening to this thing, and it was a dad that was like, the best way that I could get my child to do something is to actually just be it and live it, right?
Yeah.
And then they see the example every day. So I was just going to give you a thumbs up, because whatever's going on, it seems. You didn't have to directly say you should do this, because you kind of were living that, and they were like, you know what, that's a good way to do it. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that stuff matters.
Or they might think it's annoying. They might think it's annoying
Well,
that,
I don't know. It's
yeah.
part of the parents' lifestyle.
Yeah, right.
You know, exercising.
Right.
And you guys deem it's important, and I think
For
that
sure.
kids follow that path when they see their parents doing stuff. So
Yeah.
good work is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
thank you.
It takes
Thank
a
you.
compliment.
Thank
Do you have
you.
anything else? I mean, is there anything with work stuff? I mean, you're helping runners and stuff. Is there anything like that?
Yeah. Actually, I recently got a new certification, which I'm pretty excited about. Like, I'm a Roadrunners Club of America certified running coach now, so I'm hoping to kind of that's another thing I really do like, helping people create training plans and things like that. So that's actually a way I'm hoping to expand my business a little bit. It's probably a little more like hands off, more connecting with people regularly, maybe, and certainly creating strength plans for them as a part of that. There's a lot of people that have goals they are trying to reach. I was just talking with a woman this morning who wants to do a first triathlon, and she wants to incorporate strength in it. So I love working with people of all ages. Like, I love working with these kids in high school, but I have clients who are 72 and still have, some of them have performance goals still. It's awesome. And some just want to stay healthy.
And you can help them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. And somebody told me this too, is that if you ran a marathon, you would hire a coach for the first one and you wouldn't get hurt. But then for the second one, you wouldn't hire a coach, and then you would hurt yourself. So I think if you are a runner, it does pay, and if you're just starting to get into something, it is probably, I would advise seeking out somebody that knows, that's been kind of down the path, and they could learn from your lessons, right? And hopefully not have to follow that same path.
That's right, and be able to say, whereas first time I didn't do any strength stuff. This time I would highly encourage someone doing it to say, hey, this is just going to make you feel better and be more resilient. Yeah. And absolutely.
Resilient.
So, resilient.
I like that too. Human beings are resilient.
But we have to work at it.
Yeah, and we have to believe it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have to.
Yep.
That's another thing that I'm struggling with as a teacher.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I know that this stinks, and I know that it hurts your feelings right now, but I also know that you can overcome this. All right. So it's like, take as much time as you need. Yeah. But then we need you back in here because we're not going to be sitting off crying behind stuff.
You have a tough job.
I go preschool to 8th grade.
Job.
I do preschool to 8th grade, so
that takes a lot of energy.
It does. I agree. Speaking of energy,
a lot of energy.
We talked about this too, and I want to bring this up too. It's like you were talking about having some freedom with work, right?
Yeah.
Choosing what you want to do, so that when you are home and your parents are coming, your kids are coming to you with stuff. You want to have the brain power and the energy to be a parent, right?
Yep.
And I've learned that too with working at the school. It's very hard sometimes to be from whatever, you're there all day on just a few days a week, and then I pick up Emmy because it's at the same school, and it's like I have to be a dad here now, and I can't have my patience short because the last class just sucked all the life out of me.
That's hard.
I want to share something funny though. These two first graders yesterday, the keep you uppy game, where you hit a balloon. There's a balloon.
Oh, keep it up in the air. Okay, all right, don't let it drop.
They call it keep you uppy, right?
All right,
so we're inside because of the rain. A first grader accidentally hit somebody in the head.
Oh no!
She got upset and she was crying. So then the one that did it came over and was like checking on her, and then she's like, "You hit me in the head," and then the other one is just like, "I'm so sorry. I never want to hurt you." And they were like going back and forth, and I had to leave. I had to go do this middle school health class, and I was there like 3 minutes late, and I was just sitting there watching this unfold, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cute." But it was just funny. So
well, you never know what you're gonna get when you're teaching. You never know what you're gonna get.
And when I tell people like, "Hey, I used to coach football and wrestling," they probably expect something, and then when I tell them that I'm walking through kids' head over, come crying every day. It's a different thing, but I like it.
Well, it's okay. This author who I feel so bad that I'm forgetting his name right now, because the stuff he talks about really is so cool, and I get it. He talks about rugged flexibility. He talks about living in multiple rooms of your life. So if you only spent time in one room of your house all the time, and then something happened to that room, what would happen to you, right? So I think I love that mantra of having these different pieces of your life, because it gives you energy for the other pieces. And then if something happens to one aspect of your life, you have other places to draw strength from and energy from. Who is that? I can't remember his name.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
There was Ivy League schools right there. The suicide rate is much higher than the national average. But they found that if you're an athlete, it's not. It's constant within, because they have something else. It is not just, they don't define themselves by just being a student.
Huge.
They're student plus, or an extracurricular even too. I don't know if it applies to being in the band. But they found that if you're an athlete, it's like if you have two things, right? You don't associate yourself. If you just have that one room and that room's destroyed, what does that leave you? Nothing.
That's right.
So it's good to have
Well, and it's like all the
dabble
stuff
with a
you've
few
talked
things.
about with kids
Yeah.
not just doing one sport, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
having these
100%,
multiple
yeah.
pieces of their life, because that intensity is not good. It's not good for us, right?
And when you talked about not missing that college work too, like when I stopped coaching football, people were like, "Oh man, I bet you miss it." I'm like, I don't, because I just went to the next room. In this example, you know, so I just put you just shift your energy into other things you're doing, and I guess. I guess we're fortunate that we could kind of choose the path that we're doing. So,
I feel really fortunate.
Yeah.
I feel really fortunate. Cool. I'm glad you do too.
I did, yeah. I mean, I shared this too. There was a moment I was meeting with my friend, and we were doing one of these, and I usually look around and I just see that side of the barn's got to get redone. Our garage is leaning one way. This room next to it here needs a new roof. And so everywhere I would look, I would see the tree down on the fence line over there that I have to get. And it was always like what I need to do, rather than just being like, this place is pretty cool and sweet, and I
enjoy it as it is.
Yeah, the sun was coming up, the horses were out, and I was like, I need to make that's like maybe the focus of 2024. Find some joy, be grateful for what you got.
What's good, right? What's good.
And to socialize more, which is why I'm doing this as well.
Yes,
so I can
I
catch
love
up
it.
with people.
I love
because
it.
all the stuff we talked about, I mean, we just talked about training typically and stuff but I wanted to kind of know, I mean, just we talk about things, but you don't talk for like an hour.
That's right. It's just be for like 2 minutes
Yeah,
here
yeah.
and there, and a lot of waves as you're out with your clients outside.
Our dogs bark at you probably every time.
That's
you
all
go
right.
by.
I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
Where there was
I
a
don't
guy
mind
that was
at all.
dropping off a delivery package and he parked across the street.
Yeah.
And then our Great Dane went running out of the house, charged the fence, and this dude just took off. And I'm like,
he didn't realize that a fence was going to keep him in. I guess.
Or just deathly afraid of dogs and thought.
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyway, she darted right for it, and it probably looks like she could probably. I don't know if she could jump the fence, but she probably could.
Yeah.
If we were over there and like she was gonna come save our life for some reason, she'd probably do it. But anyway, I thought, and then this road's crazy.
It is crazy.
So I'm like, dude, this guy's gonna get hit or something.
Yeah.
Because
it is crazy. I had 2 lights out today just with the fog, but even without fog, I feel like you should run with blinking lights on this road.
Yeah. I will run up to your development kind of just run up the hill and come back. Sometimes I don't see a car.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is just gonna be my path. I used to run the other way and go down towards like would run around the tree farm.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you start running up the hill, they can't see you coming.
No.
And I'm like, there's not a lot of shoulder.
And Robsville Road, forget about it.
Yeah.
I avoid that like the plague.
I know.
Yeah.
Last summer I was running down it, and I'm like, you know what? It's a mile run down it basically from the house here to where I would turn. I'm like, I don't know. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I think making the right on Steely Hill is better.
Yeah.
And,
I did
and
that.
then,
And then you
go
can take
Stouts
that
Valley.
all the way
Yeah,
down.
exactly.
That's cool.
That's
a good
much
run.
better.
That's a good run.
It's a great
I
run.
like going to that house that has it's like County Line Road or whatever. It has like the bamboo and all
Yes,
that. Yeah,
yes.
that's I don't remember when I was at that house, but it's awesome.
Yes. No,
They have that pond. That's where I go. And
That's a great
and it's
turnaround
5
point.
miles from. It's
From
like
your
2.5
house.
there. Yeah.
That's a frequent
when I
route
build
of mine.
up, when I build up some endurance, I do that. But all right, man, are you good? Are we
Yeah.
good here? You got anything else you want to chat about? We got practice today.
We got practice.
We gotta go. Yeah.
We got practice. We're gonna first speed workout today.
Good. What are you gonna do?
Long distance kids are gonna do 800s, but with jog rest. So we're trying to keep it kind of like a fartlek run. So we don't want them to do all out speed yet. Just
So 2 laps hard. What's the pace like?
probably
Mile
5K pace. 5K pace.
5K pace.
Yeah, 5K pace for 800s. Jog rest, and then our mid distance will probably have them do 500s, but walk rest for them. And then middle schoolers, we're gonna bring them out to a flat stretch of the bike path and have them do like run decently hard for a minute and then walk back.
Yeah.
Run decently hard for a minute, walk back. So just kind of introducing it to them.
There was this guy Tony Holler does a lot more speed stuff. He calls it like feed the cats.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why. Something
the
about
cats.
cats.
I wonder what that
Something
means.
about cats like just being like super twitchy and like
Oh.
explosive and like I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway.
because they can like jump immediately, right? Or jump from just lying down, spring up.
And that's what he wants his athlete to be like that. But anyway,
Interesting.
he'll do these like 23-second runs for the 200-meter runners. So it's like, hey, you're gonna run 200.
Yeah.
That's our goal pace. Say.
Yeah.
So you mark where you end.
Yeah.
Say it's 192.
Yeah.
You want to take 5 minutes, and then you want to get 192 again, right? So he would be
the consistency.
and I'm wondering if like you get full recovery. I don't know how you fit that into the endurance stuff, but you do 1,000. Why don't you have that odd track at Wells?
Yeah, we
so
do
you can
have
do
an
the
odd track.
1,000-meter
We
run.
do have an odd track. Yeah.
That's cool though.
Yeah,
It's
it'll
all
be
good.
fun.
All right.
It'll be fun.
All good?
Cool. Yeah, thanks
for
for
coming.
thanks
it was
for
good.
having me.
Alrighty.
All right.
Yeah, that's it. See everybody.
All right, see ya.
I usually